pace and first quarter. So entering the college football playoff, Ohio State was averaging over 6.5 points in the first quarter. Against Tennessee and Oregon, they've scored 35, and the defense has not allowed one first quarter point in the postseason. I think that's been the biggest thing. You've just seen Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and the offense turn it loose. Chip Kelly, after that Michigan game, with a lot of time to reflect going into the Tennessee game, he had talked about how he should have gotten it more to his weapons in the fourth quarter of that Michigan game. Everybody will go back to it. Jeremiah Smith, the all-world true freshman, over 1,200 receiving yards this year now, was targeted twice and no catches, and he had a touchdown earlier in that game. So it seems like there's been just such an identity shift with that offense, especially. They have just refound themselves again, and they have aired it out more, and they've played loose. When Ohio State's played in the postseason the last couple of years, you'll hear Ryan Day talk about the team playing loose, playing free, and they did that against Georgia 2 years ago. Just came up 1 point and a field goal short, but they've done the exact same thing this year, and you can tell, and people are catching on to it. They're saying that this Ohio State team looks completely different in the postseason than what they did in the last couple of games of the campaign, maybe with the exception of that Indiana game.
Yeah, and they don't get an easy draw per se. I mean, I talk a lot about Penn State football being in Pennsylvania. Penn State lost the Big Ten championship and then went on to play SMU and Boise State, obviously, and they'll play Notre Dame, which is not easy, but they could go to the national championship game without beating a Power Five school. Obviously, Notre Dame is in that echelon, but Ohio State enters this postseason and they get to see the team that was tied for second in the SEC in Tennessee, and then the Big Ten champ in Oregon. Um, and obviously one of those games is at home, which helps, but how difficult was that to go through both of those teams?
It's so difficult. It's a gauntlet. Ohio State now with Texas has faced six top 10 opponents this year, which is really unheard of, even in this 14 to 15 game type of schedule when you factor in a deep college football playoff run with the 12 teams. But nonetheless, it's a gauntlet. It's not like you're going through playing a lot of low to mid major schools and G5 schools, and that's allowing you to get into the playoffs. Now, I'm a big believer that you can get into the playoff with that type of resume, but you have to back up and show that you can hang with these top five, top 10 opponents. And Ohio State, they've had the luxury this year of playing really good teams. And I think one that gave them the benefit of the doubt with a home playoff site, even with that loss to Michigan being as staining as it was. You're looking at a 1 point loss on the final possession on the road at the current number one team in Oregon. And then Ohio State quickly negates all of that by beating the Ducks by 20 plus. So it's really tough when you look at this 12-team playoff. For anybody to hoist the trophy, that's a really tough thing. For a team that played in the first round to win the whole thing, that's even more impressive because you got to win 4 games to win the national championship. Then to get that path that Ohio State had to play a really good Tennessee team, to play the number one team in the country before even getting to the semifinal, and then playing a team that has been ranked number one, and then to play either Penn State or Notre Dame, that's a really daunting task to do.
Yeah, you look at this, the individuals on this team, the guys that stand out, and you look no further than their freshman wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith. I think my favorite thing about Jeremiah Smith is that in the NFL you have to be 3 years removed from high school graduation to enter. So we're gonna get this guy for either one or two more games this season and 2 years after that at least. And I took a look at a a very what if fun scenario mock draft that was everybody in the country, regardless of a freshman, sophomore, whatever. Jeremiah Smith was the number one player in the NFL draft as a freshman. And second was Arch Manning, who's young too. But the number one player was Jeremiah Smith. That stood out to me. Just the fact that probably an NFL team would take this 18-year-old on their team, or is he 19? 18 or 19-year-old on their NFL team right now. So, what has stood out to you in practice or games about him, and what does his future look like as a college athlete?
Well, his future, Luke, is playing on Sundays for a very, very long time. I would say that Jeremiah Smith probably can be the greatest receiver in Ohio State history, and he might even be able to do that after year two, the way that his career's gone. He has shattered all of Chris Carter's freshman records at Ohio State. The last one was his 161 yards in a half and his 187 yards in a game. That's the most by a freshman wide receiver in Ohio State history. But the way that he carries himself is the biggest thing. When people talk about Jeremiah Smith at this point, they obviously talk about his skills, his physicality, his physical attributes, his just overall abilities as a wide receiver, how he's already a top three pick and he's got 2 more years of college football, but also too how great he is as a person. He just has this way about him of carrying himself as a professional, always great to us, the media, and he's super smart and respectful. And that was one of the things that the coaching staff was just so enthralled by. Have you seen the video of Ryan Day last year when he was at his press conference and he found out in real time about how Jeremiah Smith had committed to Ohio State with the
I have
possibility
not.
of maybe going to Miami? Oh my gosh, you got to watch
Yeah,
that video.
I'll take a
You
look at
can
that. Yeah.
you can literally see the relief crash into a man's body in real time. It's incredible.
Yeah, speaking of Ryan Day, a lot of people said that playing against Tennessee and playing against Oregon and maybe even this game are they're playing for his job, and that if they don't win, I mean, some have gone as far to say if this team doesn't win a national championship, then he might be fired, considering the losses to Michigan. From the outside looking in, I think it's safe now. I mean, his team just put up 83 points in 2 games against really good teams. They seem to be right back on the right track, but you're on the inside. So what is kind of the feeling and the thoughts there in terms of his job security, despite how well they played the last 2 games?
It definitely seems like there's a little bit more solidification on his job after these 2 games. Not to say that there was any real heat. For that, I don't know after the Michigan game, but after you lose three straight, now make it four straight, that definitely raises some concerns when you lose to the school that they call the team up north, Michigan. That definitely raises some questions. But I'll tell you what, Ryan Day is 68-10. He has probably one of the least favorable paths to a college football playoff national championship this year.
Yeah.
Now, going into the campaign, this was win or bust. This is almost like his job is on the line if they don't win this championship. But just given the way that the season's gone out, he's done an incredible job. He's done a masterful job, I think, rallying this team back after the Michigan game. They put their hats down and they went straight to work when they just didn't know what their fate was going to be. And that was the same thing with 2022. 2022, they didn't know, actually, probably more than this year, they didn't know if their season was even going to go on. But Ryan Day kept that team churning, and they almost gave the eventual national champions, Georgia, a run for their money. But there's something about him right now that's